I think he has an innate sense of visual.
His sense of style is that's not style.
I'm just amazed at how you just almost exploded, vomited everywhere.
That's what Michael Bay is. Hello and welcome to August Flashback First. Once a month we like to review a classic film or a film from the past, so not a current new release, and we take it in turns to decide what film we're going to watch. So this month it was Russ's turn to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you pick?
I picked The Rock.
As if one Nicolas Cage film wasn't enough this month.
You've had two. The pleasure of two.
So why did you choose The Rock? Was it just so that I would cry?
Partly, it might be nice to go back to a time when Michael Bay knew how to make films properly.
Well, did he? We'll get into that.
Wow, really? Oh, well, that's upsetting. Do you think Michael Bay could make films back in 1996?
Well,
as
I mean,
or better than he makes them now.
If you define making films as pointing a camera at something and watching it capture it on film, then yes. But then any idiot can do that. No, I don't think he was any better back then.
I was 14 years old when this film...
You are an old man.
I was 14 when this film came out, yeah.
It is essentially like a 14-year-old boy has made this film. You watch boys playing with cars and they're like, meow, explode, whoa. That's essentially all a Michael Bay film is. You can make a fun, over-the-top action film that has a sophistication to it and is a little bit more intelligent in the way that it does these things and has a bit more of a soul behind it as well, because that's the other thing. None of the characters, you really give a shit whether they live or die. I don't at all. Like, there's no real motivation for them to want to live apart from some really, like, hackneyed plot devices like, oh, his wife's pregnant, oh, Sean Connery's got a daughter. Big whoop. Sean Connery irritated me less than Nic Cage did.
He's given a lot to do, and his character's given a lot, and you're presented with a lot of information about his backstory. He's been imprisoned essentially unlawfully for the last 30 years. He's been wronged by the American system in kind of similar ways to how Ed Harris has felt wronged by the system. He's equal parts funny, charming, quite badass as well.
But Nicolas Cage, again, I do not take to him at all as an actor in anything I ever see him in, and this was no exception. The bits where he was trying to be funny, I just cringed. The bits where he was trying to be sexy, I nearly vomited in my mouth. The bits where he's trying to be badass, I just laughed because it was just so ridiculous. If they'd had another actor in there, maybe I'd feel differently about the film, but I don't. They didn't. They had Nic Cage, and more fool them, is all I can say. On the face of it, you might think that I'm never going to like this film, but actually that's not true, because I think that's unfair, because you might think from what I've just said that I don't like action films. I do. I don't have a problem with Sean Connery. I think he can be really good. I actually think some of the plot that they had in there was quite interesting, but the way that he just goes about directing things and focusing on all the how much shit he can throw at stuff to make it bigger, louder, more irritating. It's such a juvenile way of creating a film.
Okay, let's go through. From the plot side, it's a very essentially simple setup. Ed Harris, the wronged military general, has taken control of the chemical weapons, put them on Alcatraz, and is pointing them at San Francisco, demanding compensation for said victims. So that's the outline. And in terms of giving you a fairly well-rounded, not even just for a Michael Bay film, but for an action film in general, you've actually got an antagonist who you can sympathise with and who is presented with enough shades of grey that it's, I think, commendable for a Michael Bay movie.
And that's the one bit of the story that I actually found remotely interesting, was the villain. It's actually quite an interesting twist on a villain's motivations, in that actually you're kind of, as the audience, I can see why he'd be a bit annoyed about that. Maybe I wouldn't have gone about it in that way, but he's got a point. Why don't they just pay him? But Michael Bay gives short shrift to that, really.
I don't think so. I think you're dealing with, a plot surrounding the sort of excesses of the military-industrial complex in America. I think is almost fairly highbrow. I almost think we should make you watch a bit more Michael Bay, and then you can see what he has become.
I don't want to.
And you can go back and see how in this film, he's almost positively subtle in some of the things he's doing. Yes,
But the point is,
there's a few explosions. Yes, there's a few extreme camera angles in completely wrong places. But compared to what he does now...
But I don't think I should have to see him be making really shit films only to realise that this is a little bit less shit.
Yeah, if you see a lot of his recent stuff, it's quite hard to defend. But I think in the mid-90s, he'd found the right balance in taking these ridiculous kind of over-the-top action plots, but grounding them enough with enough action, the right motivation with characters, and enough comedy between Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, enough of a really fun idea of just having to break into Alcatraz. It has the right amount of explosions, the right amount of comedy,
I think it's
the
got
right
too
amount
much.
of...
It's too much. It's all too much. He just throws everything at anything without any kind of edited thought, any kind of intelligence behind why he might want more explosions other than for the sake of having more explosions. He doesn't have that filter, and I don't think he's got it in this as much as he doesn't have it in his more recent work at all. And I just think that shows a lack of skill in directing. Everything feels like it's done for the sake of doing it because he can, and that's not great filmmaking technique, in my opinion.
I couldn't disagree more for this film.
I would put it at a 5. I don't think it's a terrible, terrible, terrible film. Some moments were quite amusing, some moments were quite fun to watch, some moments were quite tense to watch, but I hate Nicolas Cage. Don't think he did this film any favours whatsoever, and I just think Michael Bay's a 15-year-old masquerading as a film director.
I don't know how you can be so cruel to such
Such a lovely man.
Such a classic 90s staple of a film in The Rock. It's a solid 8.5, if not a 9 out of 10. I think it's almost...
That's ridiculous. That is literally the most insane thing that's ever come out of your mouth. 9?
It's the 14-year-old in me is still completely
a moron
in love with The Rock. I'd go back to The Rock at a moment's notice. It's a 9. It's a solid 9. It's a classic 90s buddy action comedy film thing.
Who else loves The Rock? Who else loves Michael Bay? Who else loves Nicolas Cage? I hate you all. Or do you agree with me and think that he's just an idiot? Let me know in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. And if you want to suggest a film for the next Flashback First, what we do in September, feel free to write that in the comments too. Happy to take viewer suggestions as well. And in the meantime, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and those links are in the description box below. And we will see you soon with another new release video. Thank you. Bye. I think we can establish that the 14-year-old you was an idiot.